Welcome at a particularly tough moment, but we wanted to do this Facebook Live, my colleague Shreeshan and I, with you, to discuss what is happening in Mumbai, the flooding in Mumbai, but not to discuss Mumbai alone, but to discuss what we are beginning to see in the way what we believe the normal is changing. The weird weather is now becoming the normal. And that Mumbai is therefore a result of both the gross mismanagement of our own ability to manage water, hold water, but it is also the fact that today the world is seeing the beginning of climate change. Extreme weather events are growing, which means our ability to forecast this rain, our ability to live with both the excess of water and the shortage of water will become critical. So let's understand when we say the new normal. Let's look at the fact that you've had Chandigarh, a city that went underwater just recently. It had deficient rains till August 21st, and then it got 115 millimeters of rain in just 12 hours. It drowned. Therefore, it got 15% of its annual monsoon rain in a few hours. That's exactly what happened in Mumbai. 300 mm of rain in a city which on an average gets about 2,000 millimeters of rainfall, monsoon rainfall. The same thing happened in Bengaluru, no rain, and then it poured. 150 mm of rain in just about a day, which is close to 30% of its annual rainfall. Same thing in Mount Abu. Same thing that you're beginning to see across the country. And dare I say it, even in Houston. You're beginning to see extreme rain, not what can be called normal rain, but extreme rainfall increasing. We are therefore going from a situation, as we keep saying, of drought to flood. And why do we say this? Because if you look at the data of this last year, you will see that 40% of the districts of India still face the prospect of drought. And yet, 25% of the districts have had such heavy rainfall that it has led to flooding. So what you're having is drought at the time of floods and floods at the time of drought. You're seeing a coexistence of the two. The intensity and frequency of flooding is therefore increasing. Large parts of this country today are submerged, drowned. People have lost their livelihoods. They are crippled. Remember, a flood is not a temporary phenomena. A flood takes away the development dividend. It makes people poorer because they lose their livestock, they lose their homes. State governments which have invested in schools, toilets, all that goes back. So you're beginning to see increasing poverty, increasing marginalization. And this is really what I have been saying now for a long time. This is a result of this double whammy. On one hand, we have gross mismanagement of our cities' water resources, of our floodplains. There is no doubt in my mind that Mumbai did not have to drown the way it did, but it drowned because of the fact that it has lost all its ability to drain its water, to be able to channelize the drainage so that it can store it either in the lakes or even channelize the overflow into the river. Mumbai is the luckiest of all cities. It has the massive drainage of the Indian Ocean. And so it really did not have to drown. But the other fact is that cities are now getting, on one hand, mismanagement. On the other hand, we are beginning to see these extreme rainfall events. Rain that comes in such few hours, so much rain, that the city administration is just not able to cope. So they're not even geared for normal rainfall, and now comes that whooper of a rainfall, that huge amount of rainfall that they cannot cope with. So the new future, the new normal is this, and we have to plan for it. Otherwise, we are in trouble. And this is really what I wanted my colleague Shreeshan, who has been following this and actually doing very detailed, careful analysis on the monsoon, on the changing patterns of the monsoon, the linkages with the models of climate change, to really unpackage this for us, to tell us a little bit more about what he is beginning to see from the science, from the data, and help us to understand what does the present look like. Because if we don't understand the present, we're certainly unprepared for the future. Shreeshan.
Thank you. So for a while now, all the models and all the projections have kind of indicated at a higher frequency of extreme rainfall and increasing intensity of extreme rainfall. At the same time, they've also predicted the mean rainfall, especially over the Indian region, to reduce, which in itself indicates, shows the dichotomy between the two. So right now, although all these projections kind of show us paint a future scenario somewhere 50 years, 100 years down the line, what we are actually seeing is that we are already on this trajectory, we are already on the slope towards the peak that these projections describe. The latest kind of studies from last year and this year tell us that extreme rainfall events all over the world are slated to increase. And the biggest increase is supposed to be over the Asian monsoon region, which includes India. And this increase is more than 25%, it's projected to be more than 25%. So what we are seeing today around the country is probably these predictions coming true. We are already on this path. There have been a lot of there have been a lot of studies, a lot of research trying to figure out how our rainfall is changing with climate and how the variability is affected. The extreme rainfall variability is affected by climate change. And most of these studies are again pointing towards the same thing, that the number of normal rainy days that you used to see earlier are going to reduce, and instead they're going to be compensated for by extreme rain events. What we know as lows and cyclonic storms have been increasing and are slated to continue to increase, while low pressure systems of depressions which cause normal rain are reducing. And that is something that we've seen even in this year's monsoon. So the situation right now is that we are probably in the beginning of this bell curve going up the slope towards the peak that is, that could be any time in the next few decades. With extreme rain, there is another very interesting trend at play. That is with the variability in the places of these extreme rains. We prepared a map up to August 22nd this year, and this map is basically shows all the spots of rain.
The map is on the screen now.
Yeah.
So you can actually show, you can explain the map now in great detail, Shreeshan.
Yeah. So this map indicates the regions of rainfall deficiency, and the spots indicate wherever there has been heavy or extreme rainfall. The red spots are heavy, and the dark red crimsonish spots are extreme rain events. Now, typically India has 2 or 3 hotspots where these extreme rain events form, and this is along the west coast and closer to in the northeastern region. But this year, what we see that's interesting is that these spots are not just limited to these places. There's a greater distribution in mainland India, especially in places in the Deccan, which there were fewer of those in previous years, and in central India. as well as, of course, Rajasthan.
So just to make the point, can I understand this, Shreeshan? What you're saying is that the red dots that you have made on this map signify both heavy rain days and extreme heavy rain days, right?
Yes.
The dark red is heavy rain days.
Yes.
An extreme rain day is classified by the Met Department as rain which is over 244 millimeters in a matter of 12 hours, 24 hours.
That's right.
So you're talking about those extreme rain days, which you're saying are 16 events that have happened up to mid-August.
Right.
And the point that you're making is that those extreme events have actually beginning to show up in areas which didn't have such extremes in the past.
Exactly. So 70 to 80% of these extreme events where there has been more than 244.5 mm in 24 hours have actually happened in areas that were not considered to be hotspots for this kind of activity. And that is something that's really striking. At the same time, we have about 40% of the country in this map which is deficient and probably headed towards drought. This combined with the fact that there are indications of the monsoon withdrawing sooner than normal, there is great variability even
So what you're saying, Shreeshan, and this should worry us and concern us, what you're saying, and if you go back to the map, if what you're saying is that whereas you have deficit and you have surplus, and you are showing surplus also because areas that were deficit have gone from being deficit to surplus in one stroke.
Oh yes.
Okay,
yes.
So they've had, like Bengaluru was showing to be deficient rainfall. With the rainfall it got in a matter of 12 hours, it has moved to surplus.
It has moved to normal.
It has moved to normal.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if you don't hold that water, which you can't, because the sheer downfall that you get, the pour that you get, you have to have abilities to hold it. You move, then that same cycle goes on, and you move, this entire area will move from surplus to drought.
Right.
Because so, if you look at this map, what you're saying is, and if you look also at the number of people affected by floods this year, as this map shows, you're going into a cycle of events where it's going to be drought, and then you get these extreme rain events, which moves the country into believing that we've had normal rain, where we've not really had normal rain because we've had very extreme rain in certain places and no rain in certain places. And you move therefore from going from drought to flood to drought again.
Right.
And that's what should worry us, right?
Yes, that should definitely. So the IMD kind of puts out weekly rainfall statistics and weekly rainfall departures. And what's striking about this is that although India as a whole shows normal rainfall right now, most of these, there's just less than a fourth of 400 odd statistics that they've put out. Less than a fourth of those fall under the normal category.
Okay.
Most of these are either large deficient, large excess, or excess. So until a certain point, you have subdivisions that have a large deficient, and then suddenly over 2 days you have 300 mm of rain, and then it's in excess because that's about half the region's.
No, but this also means that we really have to learn to become much better in the way we manage our water systems.
That's right,
because our ability to hold the water, our ability to channelize the water, the flood water, even in normal times, we were not able to manage floods. And what you're telling me now is that this rain is going to come as one huge downpour, and after that there'll be nothing.
Yeah.
Okay? In most circumstances, which means that holding that water, channelizing it, and being able to store it for the 12 months beyond is going to be absolutely critical.
Yeah,
and that's really the nature, the changing nature of drought and flood.
Right, right. And this is even more pronounced in urban spaces.
Okay.
Well, urbanization and weather are kind of linked in many ways. So, in one kind of linkage, there have been studies that are trying to probe how urbanization changes weather patterns or rainfall patterns in a place. Now, there haven't been any conclusive, conclusive
but
evidence
you're talking
of this
about
increase.
this is microclimate, right?
That's right.
This is very different from what you and I are beginning to see,
Right.
what we are talking about today,
Right.
which is the gross, the big climate change.
Exactly.
And that if I can just recap quickly what you have said and then move to the discussions, because we have a number of viewers and a number of questions. I mean, what you're saying to me is, and you're saying to all of us, is the following. One, you're saying that all climate models had predicted that there will be a growth in extreme rain events. They had particularly predicted that the South Asian region where we are based would be most vulnerable to those extreme events. Okay. Second point you're making is that those models are now beginning to show up. So they're coming true.
Yeah.
What we thought were models are actually happening in real life now. They're playing out today. We are seeing a real picture happen. And what you're also saying, which I had not thought about earlier, is that you're saying the models are only, this is a trajectory. We're on the beginning of it. It's going to increase. So the intensification and the sheer the scale, the pace, the ferocity of these extreme events is only going to increase in the years to come.
Yeah.
And so we are somewhere on that trajectory, okay? And the other thing that you're saying is that these models have shown that you are going to see a change in the hotspots, that the hotspots will move, that you're going to get more and more India covered under what will be under the extreme rain category.
Right.
So where the traditional hotspots were the western regions, some part of the eastern India, where you would expect these kind of extreme rain, you can see it now across the country, or at least the mid part of the country.
Right, and the big problem with that is that with the hotspots, it's kind of predictable that these places will see 1, 2, 3 events of extreme rain every year. But with these other places, it's very unpredictable. You don't know, you're not used to this kind of rainfall, so you don't anticipate it. And with such high variability, there's a very low probability that the same place is going to be hit by the same kind of rainfall year after year, which is what we used to see till now. And that is changing now. So that is a big problem. With urban spaces...
so we have a number of people who've asked us questions on urban spaces. The urban spaces question, I can't find the questions here. The urban spaces question, there's someone, Sudeep Sahu has asked us that our planners have ignored riverbed and water catchment area and allowed construction. When rain comes, water does not go to a river and the water catchment area and causes flood. People blame on rain and not on faulty management. That would be very true, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Like cities are changing entities that we build for us. So one of, in a very logical sense of thinking, one of the main things that you would consider is the weather. You dress according to your weather, you eat according to the weather, you do so many things according to the weather. There's no reason for a city to not be designed keeping the weather in mind or the climate in mind, and yet that is the dominant practice today. So there is no...
And the fact is, you're very right, Sudeep. The fact is, we have just not planned our cities so that we respect rain. We do not believe that we need to plan cities for rain. We plan cities only for land, for buildings, for shops, for malls, for roads, for cars. We don't plan them for rain. And that's when it rains, we just are caught unaware, and that's when Mumbai drowns, Bengaluru drowns, Chandigarh drowns. And they will drown even more in the years to come because our catchments are not planned for and our riverbeds have been encroached upon. Now, Ayushman, Akshay Deoras, who, as you know, is somebody who follows also the monsoons very carefully, Akshay has asked you, Shreeshan, can you also talk about the uncertainties and model errors in all these projections of monsoon in extreme rain? And do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, yes. Okay, right in the beginning, the IMD issues forecasts, long-range forecasts. And this year especially, the long-range forecast had model errors of 8%, 9%. And these are big errors. When you look at uncertainties, the probability during the first range forecast for the the normal prediction that they gave was just 38%. That's 38% probability that this is going to be right.
Wow.
Which means there's a...
But Shreeshan, answer one question. Why did Mumbai drown? Did we not have enough knowledge? I mean, the fact is, you got 300 mm rainfall in Mumbai. You got, as I said, 115 mm rainfall in Chandigarh.
Yeah.
And then you got Bangalore. Honestly, I did not see any such strong warnings which were issued by the IMD to say heavy rain, extremely heavy rain, because this will be classified, even according to them, as extremely heavy rain.
Right.
Okay? Where were the real warnings? Why did these warnings not make landfall?
Yeah. So, all three of these cases are slightly different. Now with Chandigarh, I think there was just a failure to predict the event at all.
Okay.
A complete failure, because the reason for the Chandigarh rain is an atmospheric circulation that the IMD is not really great at predicting.
So you're talking about this western disturbance, as it is called.
Yeah.
So we really don't know the western disturbance. We can broadly say they're going to hit, but we don't know how much and where and how much rain they'll bring.
Exactly.
Okay.
With Bangalore, there was the rains in South India were predicted, but specifically regarding Bangalore, there was no warning issued, as far as I'm aware. Now, it could be a failure to predict the rainfall itself. With Bombay, with Mumbai, there was a forecast, a flood rainfall warning.
That was right, I saw it.
IMD
IITM as well, I saw. IITM's map showed very clearly that there was going to be heavy to very heavy rainfall in Mumbai. Have we just got immune to these words called heavy to heavy rainfall, very heavy rainfall, and we see it as, nothing?
Well, that is something for BMC to answer, because the municipality and the state government, in my opinion, did a really shoddy job at preparing the city. No one that I knew from Mumbai really took this warning seriously. Everyone went to work, schools and colleges were open. Yesterday at 4 o'clock, the forecast issued by the IMD said that there was going to be rain for the next 72 hours, heavy rain in Bombay.
Yeah.
And that hasn't been the case.
And that really is worrying, because, when you say this, now tomorrow people will say, oh, we don't believe your forecast. And therefore, next time when you issue it to say heavy to heavy rain, you're going to say, oh, but you get it wrong all the time.
Yeah, that is...
Shreeshan, we really need to improve our prediction capabilities in this time of extreme rain. That is clear to me that climate change is one thing we will have to do with climate change, is become much smarter, much better in being able to predict extreme rain, to be able to give the warning as it is required, and not every time fail and say, oh, we didn't know when Srinagar, we didn't know when Chennai, we didn't know Mumbai, we didn't know Bangalore, we didn't know Chandigarh. So what did we know?
Right, that is definitely something that the IMD has to do. There are several areas in which they need to improve their understanding. Firstly, there's the western disturbances and the jet streams that are in the upper atmosphere. Then there's this thing of extreme rain. We don't know what are the factors that contribute to this. What the clouds say about this, and we just don't know. There has to be a lot of work done on it, and then be integrated into the models. Then the long term, we routinely get it wrong. The medium term,
but clearly, Shreeshan, I mean, we can keep saying this, but I think what is very clear, and I really want to wrap this up is to say that, what Mumbai tells us, what even Houston tells us, is that we are in a new normal in the world. There is a new normal, and let's get that clear. The new normal today is going to be extreme rain events. Those extreme rain events are going to increase in frequency and in intensity. Remember, India on an average gets only 100 hours of rainfall in a year. That's a very gross figure, we know. Now, what therefore with climate change is going to happen is more rain in fewer number of days. And that's what you're beginning to see play out today. And as you see that scenario being played out in front of us, what is also very clear is our inability to stay ahead One, to be able to predict these events. And when we predict them, to be able to communicate these events. And when we communicate them, to be able to take the remedial action. As Shreeshan has said very clearly, why did BMC not close schools? Why did they not plan for extremely heavy rain when it was known and it was told by IMD that this would happen? So our inability to act when we know, and our lack of information and our lack of ability to predict. So on both hands we need improvement.
Oh yes, definitely.
But all that is also not good enough, Shreeshan, if we don't get water management right. Okay? And that's really the big part of this story. I mean, the fact is India has had, when I have talked about this, a number of my readers have written back to me saying, but India has always had floods. Why are you now talking about floods in this new and saying that this is about climate change? I'm not talking about floods because of climate change. I'm talking about the intensity and frequency of floods. I'm also talking about floods happening at the time of drought. I'm talking about flooding happening in areas that never had floods before because of this extreme rain events. So the nature of flooding is changing, and that's what we need to understand. Now this means that our ability to hold the water becomes critical. Today the government of India, and I can't say this definitely because it's only been reported in the media, I read that they are planning to dredge the Brahmaputra. There can be nothing more ludicrous than this. The fact is that you cannot dredge the Brahmaputra and therefore mitigate floods in Assam. The only way to be able to mitigate floods in Assam is to channelize the water of Brahmaputra so that you can link it to the millions of water bodies that have existed in Assam so that the water is dispersed over large areas and in fact becomes the way to recharge groundwater and is used for the subsequent period of drought. That's what was done in Bengal. That was what done in Bihar. It's not the embankments that will protect Bihar. The Kosi has been known to be a river which is both a mother and a witch. Just imagine a river that is called in folklore a mother and a witch, only because it has moved so much. It brings sorrow, but it also brings silt. It also brings prosperity. The ability to use that flood water for prosperity is going to be critical. And this is where cities have to learn. I mean, today, if Houston is drowning and Mumbai is suffering, and you've seen it in Chandigarh or in Bangalore, it's because of our inability to understand that we need land for water. We've filled all our waterways. We have made sure our rivers are nothing but channels now. And in Mumbai's case, the Mithi has been its classic case, where a perennial flowing river is today officially called a drain. We've finished our green areas where water could flow into, could be recharged, could be a sponge. So our sponges are disappearing. And as our sponges disappear, we will drown. So we can curse our municipalities as we must, but we must also force them to rise up to this challenge, because we will need to have a different way of flood management in a world where the normal has changed. And I think that's really where, Shreeshan, I want to end this to say that this is really the crisis for tomorrow. And if we can manage this better, we will have some way of dealing with it. Otherwise, climate change, mismanagement, human-made mismanagement is only going to make it worse and worse. Thank you very much. I hope we will be able to continue this conversation week after week. Thank you very much.